Well, first, welcome, and of course to our special guest, Pistol Pete. Don't be shy about getting your picture with him if you want to. And of course, Dr. Jim Romas, the previous Associate Vice President for International Studies and Outreach, and everybody else here who has some affiliation with correspondence education. And I want to just, this is the moment to kind of just pause and reflect on what correspondence education is at OSU, and we're having a 90th anniversary celebration, and what does that really mean? Well, let's go back in time 94 years to 1917. And in April 1917, the United States declared war on Germany, and what was just a European war became a world war. And food, engineers, and soldiers were in great demand by the Americans, and Oklahoma A&M was in a position to help with all of those. Agricultural efforts intensified, especially in the production and preservation of food, and they had war gardens, and they promoted those among the rural and the urban dwellers, and they taught the students canning and food preservation techniques so that when they went home in the summertime, they could spread that knowledge through their local communities. And on top of all that, there was a shortage of sugar. And of course, everybody likes something sweet once in a while. There's a great cake back there if you haven't had it. But there was a shortage of sugar. And so that caused the creation of the first correspondence course ever offered at OSU, which was on beekeeping, so that people in rural areas could keep bees, develop the production of honey, and have something sweet back in their diet. And that was the first correspondence course here at OSU. In 1921, OSU President James Eskridge recommended that a correspondence school be established at Oklahoma A&M, and here we stand 90 years later. And correspondence education is still involved in military education. This year, they attended a number of weekend programs marketing to Oklahoma National Guard members coming to and from both Afghanistan and Iraq. And so that's a long tradition of correspondence education, and also its involvement with the military, which is, I think, quite notable. In 1941, correspondence education accounted for nearly half of the enrollment at OSU. And we're ready for that again. But it had, at that time, OSU had about 6,000 resident students on campus and around 5,000 students in correspondence education. In 1945, now we're getting to the end of World War II, Oklahoma A&M was called Foxhole University because of all the military people that were taking correspondence courses from Oklahoma A&M. And the entire world was its campus. And correspondence education was well suited to the conditions of our servicemen and women. And while delays in the mail were common, you know, the war and people spread out all over and changing their location, mail delays were common. It was also really uncommon to completely lose track of a student. So there was disruption in service, but not a stop of service because of the war, and even to the people involved in it. In Sergeant Russell J. Condrey of Stroud, Oklahoma, enrolled and took a correspondence course through the American Red Cross while he was being held as a prisoner of war in a German POW camp. That's kind of another notable, it makes you think of Hogan's Heroes a little bit. Although I'm sure it wasn't quite like that. Enrollment remained strong after World War II with over 500 students enrolled. And the demand for audio visuals for correspondence education was what actually caused the establishment of the photography service at OSU in 1947. And many of you probably remember that photographic unit. That was actually caused by a demand for correspondence courses, materials. Now I want to briefly go through the leadership of correspondence education. I hope I don't leave anyone off, although if that occurs, it would only be for those of you with really long memories, because I'm pretty sure back about 30 years. But J.R. Campbell was the first director, 1921 to 1924. Then Lucius Burton, Lawrence Crable, Gladys McGaw, when Dr. Wilhelm was president, from 1957 to 1975. And then John Jobe, a professor of math, for a little while, 1975 to 1977, when Peggy Gardner became the director. And then Charles Feasley from West Virginia came to be the director of correspondence education in 1981. He's probably a person most people here remember. And then Sharon Nivens is the associate director from 2004 to 2009. Is that right? There we are. And then from 2009, Evelyn Furchow has been the director of correspondence education. And correspondence education won national awards for innovative courses both in 1978 and 1979 when 3,500 students were enrolled. And I want to introduce Sharon Nivens here, who is the former director of correspondence education. And today, correspondence education is located in Suite 309 of the West Watkins Center. An enrollment office, a materials distribution center, a testing center for proctored exams are all maintained by 7 full-time employees. Correspondence education has won 17 course development awards in the last 35 years. 75% of the correspondence education instructors are tenure-track faculty at OSU, and 25% approximately are doctoral track in their area of expertise. Correspondence education is much more than delivery by mail. It's an instructional technique of back and forth, of deliver and evaluate, of learn and practice and studying and growing. It's a forced relationship, an individual relationship between the student and instructor because of the correspondence. It's always one-on-one. And it has a unique role in the history of Oklahoma State University. And I want to end by just introducing the current employees of correspondence education. Evelyn Furchow is the manager, and Paul Alexander is the analyst. Susan Dukes is the accounting specialist. And in student and faculty services, Kathy Custer, Jenny England, Barbara Smith, and Cecilia Boardman are our employees in correspondence education. And let's have a big round of applause.